Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to IBSI's Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I'm your host, Joshua Washington, the Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I will be joined by my lovely co-hosts and our head of Speakers Bureau, Olga Washington, in a little bit. um, yes, I was just in California a few days ago for a quick trip. Now I'm back here and happy to be here with y'all today. We got a lot to hop into. First of all, that song you heard, our theme music is by Randy Sandoli. It's a song called "The First 7 Miles." You can get it on his album entitled Simcha. It is streaming everywhere. If you like that tune, if you like our theme song you hear every day, you will love his entire album. Check it out, y'all. Um, so yes, check that out. That's Randy Sandoli. Simcha is the album. Beautiful, beautiful music. Um, all right. So now, California was great. I was there for the weekend with this nonprofit called Stockton Soul. I sit on the board as a head of the board, the chairman of the board for Stockton Soul. It's a music education nonprofit organization that teaches about the roots of American music, teaches about Black music. And we had our annual holiday concert, but this time I was also asked to give a keynote speech um, on incorporating Black music stylings and church stylings into the orchestra. We had a wonderful time. Got some other contacts as well. We'll be doing some other work with other music educators in different parts of the country. So excited about that. We had a great time. The concert itself was amazing, and it's always amazing to meet young musicians and to help and teach them and pour into them and also just be energized by them as well. So we had a great time there in Stockton, California. Now I'm back here in North Carolina. Just a few announcements before we get started. Listen, we have a lot of events coming up over the next couple of weeks, you guys. It's a little bit crazy, but it's good stuff. Good stuff. So, first of all, the uh, end of the year campaign starts uh, tomorrow. It's Giving Tuesday. Our goal is $36,000. Um, so we are still, looking for legacy builders, donations from you. A lot of you have, I think, a couple weeks ago. Oh, sorry, that was last week. That's why I was confused about that announcement. So it was last week. But we are still looking for legacy builders. 2 weeks ago, we talked about it, and a lot of you became legacy builders or gave one-time donations. Become a legacy builder. It's very simple. It's a monthly amount that you give. It can be very small. I made a challenge to those who are watching to give at least $18 a month. You can definitely do that. If you're watching this, you can scan the QR code that's up in the corner, or go to ibsi.org and donate that way. We're doing this. It's all the way until the end of this year, so all the way until December 31st. We're trying to reach a goal of $36,000 to continue doing what we're doing. Events. So December the 6th, which is in 2 days. December the 6th, which is in 2 days, we will be in New York for a very, very special event called the Abraham Accords post October 7th. For those who are only hearing about it today, we only put this together a few days ago. We had a friend reached out to us. We'll have some of the people, all of the panelists, I should say, are Arabs from different Arab countries who signed the Abraham Accords, and other Arab countries as well. They'll be speaking about their love and support for Israel, why they love and support Israel, and how important that relationship is between Israel and the Arab world. It's going to be a very, very special event. We're hosting it. There's a link that's on our website. Go to our event page and click on that and register. You'll get other details as you register, but we're going to be in Manhattan doing that event. Is going to be incredible. The 7th, which is the next day, our CEO and founder is hosting, it's called an event called Israel at War and the Rise of Historic Anti-Semitism. It's a webinar. Register for it. You don't want to miss any event that our CEO himself is hosting for sure. It's a very important message, and helps to kind of figure out where we need to go next. December 12th, IBSI Pastors presents Africa's and Black America's prophetic call to Zion. That one is a message that's been our CEO has been giving for, I would say, a better part of a year now, maybe more, and it's still very, very much pertinent and relevant. If you haven't heard it before, it's not always the same exact message every time, but there's definitely some things that need to be said and need to be learned there. So register for that one as well. That's the IBSI Pastors event. So especially if you're a pastor, um, register, sign up for that, and be a part of that. And then on the 12th of January, myself, our CEO, we will be at the Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles. So if you're in LA, if you're in Southern California, you should come out to that. It's going to be an amazing event. We're going to be doing some stuff before Shabbat starts on that Friday, and some music, some speaking. It's going to be incredible. I'll be there the day before doing some music at another venue in LA. If you want to know about that, you can reach out to me. But we'll basically just be in LA. Just so happens that our speakers bureau chief Olga Washington will also be on LA for the weekend because Club Z is also having their national conference. So it just kind of all worked out that way. So the Washingtons will be in LA, and you got to see at least one of us. You got to see at least one of us. So come out to that. And then one more thing I didn't mention, but I mean, it's not something to invite you to, but tomorrow we'll be attending an organization called Emet's annual dinner. We've been asked to be there. We're going to see some incredible speakers. Richie Torres is one of the speakers that's going to be. There's a lot of other political leaders there. It's going to be awesome, and we're excited just to get the chance to connect with and talk with these other very strong supporters of Israel up in Washington, D.C. So we're excited about that. All right, so let's get right into it. For those who are on YouTube, welcome again. You could post, comment, questions, whatever. We'll see them on here and try to answer them as best as we can as we go along. So let's talk about Oakland, California again. I especially wore you can't see it unless I put the camera down, my Oakland shirt that I got from an art gallery there. Last time I was in Oakland was last July for the this huge one. I think it was one of the largest music festivals in the Bay Area, or at least in Oakland and the surrounding areas, called Oakland's First Fridays. And my band and I, we played there on the first Friday of Oakland. We had an incredible time. I did a lot of walking, mainly because I just wanted to save money and not call Uber all the time. And it's not how I remember it. And there's definitely a lot of areas that were kind of depressing to see. A lot of churches that are closed down, a lot of buildings that don't exist anymore. But I also saw a lot of new businesses. I saw a lot of, especially in the Black community, there were a lot of, like this art gallery. The guy I talked to, I made a whole video about it. He was selling these shirts at his art gallery that say Oakland. And what it does is it says Oakland in kind of an interesting font. This one happens to be Hebrew. Obviously, it doesn't say Oakland in Hebrew. It just looks like Hebrew. But if you look underneath it, it says Oakland, or like the land of oaks. Some languages don't translate Oakland exactly, so you have to kind of be creative with it. And I think that this actually translates to like the land of oaks or something like that underneath. And it had in different languages. It had it in I got one in Amharic for my dad. I think I got one in a Ghanaian dialect. And then they even had like the fictional language. I got one in Wakandan for, I think it was my mom I got that for. And then for my wife, I got the Ghanaian one, I think. And so they have partners all over the world that help them with this translation. In South Africa, in Ghana, they had it in Persian. They had it in, like I said, in Hebrew. They have an Israeli partner that they work with. So I thought that was really cool. And I got to talk to that guy for a while. And that whole thing was just the way that it came about. I was just walking down the street and I walked past the gallery, and they had a grand piano that caught the corner of my eye. And I went back and I almost decided to walk away, but I said, let me just go in for a second. So I sat down. No one was in there, played the piano for a little bit. And then he came upstairs from the basement where his office was. And that's how we started talking. That's how I found out about these shirts and got them. Really great, and we'll link. We linked it before on our Substack, but I'll link it again. The gallery in Oakland, definitely is one to support for sure. So that was my last time there, and but since I've been there, and before and even after, we've been very much following what's been going on in Oakland and in other cities who have been um, affected, specifically affected by the defund the police campaign. Um, and that's not a political talking point. These are coming from what I'm telling you now is coming from the people on the ground. The NAACP chapter in Oakland, community leaders in Oakland have said that this defund the police, these efforts to defund the police, and the actual policy that went forward has further devastated our communities, has further devastated our neighborhoods. People, there have been more murders, have been more homicides, have been more crime. Things are unsafe. They've been unsafe for a long time, and now things are worse. Right? This is what they've been saying. And again, IBSI has been following this for some years now, and has been calling it out, writing articles, and speaking about this, not just because of the same people who cried for defunding the police are the ones who pushed that whole, they call it the deadly exchange campaign, right? The campaign um, that says that Israel is responsible for police brutality in the United States. So we push back on that, but more than just that, it's still just it's detrimental to Oakland, right? It's detrimental to the communities, and so what's happening now is that things are worse, worse, worse than ever. I talked to a police officer as I was walking to the festival. I was probably 6 blocks away. I started to hear the music and everything, and then I talked to a police officer who's at the perimeter, and she was just talking with me about, how she's like, she was a young age, an older Asian lady, maybe in her 50s, and she was talking about how just things are hard because there's less of us as police officers, and the sentiment against police officers has grown. um, there are times when we're just tempted to let things happen, right? We see something happening on the street and we're just kind of like, oh, well, do I really want to get involved with this, or do I want to be on the news tomorrow? Like, and she was like, she found it refreshing that we could just have a conversation. She said, you just never know when you're wearing this uniform, when you talk to someone, what's going to happen. And I was like, yeah. And so, but this has been happening, and things have been worse and worse um, in Oakland. And one of the things that we've called out in relation to that is the response from particularly the city council in Oakland, has been lacking, to say the least. And when I say lacking, to say the least, I mean they've just downright have been ignoring their people. We've reported on reports that were coming out of Oakland just a few months ago. There were community members who were outside of the city council building wanting to go in and meet with the city council member, and they wouldn't even let them in the building. They wouldn't even meet with these people. A few months before that, and this is what we're going to talk about, this is where we're going to start, this is our starting point. Our CEO wrote an article called "Post BLM Oakland is crying out for help and nobody cares." And of course, in the article, he clarifies, or he's just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. The nobody cares part, it doesn't literally mean nobody. It's saying that all those people who are talking about justice and Black Lives Matter and all those things are saying nothing. They actually don't care at all, right? So despite the NAACP's call for a state of emergency, despite these members actually demonstrating in front of the city council building, no response. Either a non-response or pushing back. And so we've been following this, we've been tracking this, we've been calling out Black Lives Matter from the beginning, because they were out in the streets talking about defund the police, and aggressively pushing this agenda. And now where are they? They're nowhere to be found. They're enjoying, especially the top leaders, enjoying their millions and millions of dollars. BLM is, who knows? We've been saying that this has been the game from the beginning. So now, on top of that, to add insult to injury, city council met. Okay, this was just a little over a week ago now. The city council of Oakland met. They came together to discuss and to have people give accounts, or addresses, I should say, on Israel. And they came together to call for a ceasefire in Israel. I want to show you a video that our CEO tweeted out from that city council hearing. Maria, if you have that, go ahead and play that for our people, please. Just 1 second, you all. It's coming up. For those on Instagram, I'm just going to flip this around and then you'll be able to kind of see it and hear it. 1 second. Okay. 1 second, you guys. It's coming up. I will say this while we're loading it up is that, and I'm gonna go further after the video is shown, but these aren't indicators of a movement that is straying away. Okay? These aren't indicators of a movement that somehow lost its way or forgot who their friends were. Okay? This is an indicator of a movement whose agenda was never for the things that they said they were for. Never. And I want you to stay with me because I'm going to get into a couple of things here as it pertains to us as Israel advocates and how we keep falling into the same traps and how we keep getting into the same cycles and how it's never going to stop until we realize some stuff. Okay, so the video's ready. Let's play.
There's not been beheadings of babies and rapings. Israel murdered their own people on October 7th.
Calling Hamas a terrorist organization is ridiculous, racist, and plays into genocidal propaganda that is flooding our media and that we should be doing everything possible to combat.
I support the right of Palestinians to resist occupation, including through Hamas, the armed wing of the unified Palestinian resistance.
As an Arab, asking with this context to condemn Hamas is very anti-Arab racist.
The notion that this was a massacre of Jews is a fabricated narrative. Many of those killed on October 7th,
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up.
including children, were killed by the IDF. An amendment condemning Hamas is bald propaganda meant to...
Thank you. Your time is up.
To hear them complain about Hamas violence is like listening to a wife beater complain when his wife finally stands up and fights back.
Question. Did anyone else notice that those who oppose this resolution are old white supremacists?
There's been a lot of atrocity propaganda ranging from claims of beheaded babies to mass rape.
Hamas is not a terrorist organization just because the U.S. and Israel deems it so. Hamas is a resistance organization that is fighting for the liberation of Palestinian people and their land.
The Oakland City Council could not bring itself to condemn the atrocities committed by Hamas. So you guys saw it, right? Now, before we even get to what was said, I just want to just emphasize this again. The City Council of Oakland came together to discuss this. What were we just talking about 5 minutes ago? They wouldn't even meet with their own people to discuss people dying in their own streets. There were men and women standing outside of City Council, and City Council would not even let them in the building. But what do they have time to do? They have time to have a discussion about a country that's 10,000 miles away. What in the world? Right? But let's not even get to the fact that they're unfairly and they're propagating lies and demonizing Israel, right? That's absolutely true, and we'll talk about that. But let's just talk about the fact that they're discussing Israel in the first place. You are Oakland, California. What in the world does Israel have to do with you? What in the world is what's going on in Israel has to do with what's going on in Oakland? I don't understand. Why do we not have time to discuss the spiking murders that have been happening, the homicides, the children who've been killed, the child deaths, not just on accident caught up in the crossfire. I'm talking about gang members who shoot little kids on purpose just to get at someone that they don't like. I remember I shared this, my father, and then I shared this video of, I don't know if this man was in Oakland or Chicago, but there's a man who recorded a video. He was in a rough part. He lived in a rough city. And he said he remembers, and he said he used to gangbang and everything. He remembers he was younger, where even with all the gangbanging, he said that when someone saw their enemy and they were going to kill them, right? But they saw that their enemy was with their son, with their daughter, with their mother, they would relent because they didn't want to kill their child, right? And they would look at them and they'd be like, ooh, you're so lucky you got your kid with you. Next time. And so his point was, yes, we were out there gangbanging and we were, lawless to a degree, but there were still some boundaries that were there, right? We didn't intentionally kill children. If my beef was with you, then my beef was with you. If I saw you out in the streets, walking your grandma across the street, okay, we'll have to beef later. We'll have to duke it out later, right? I can't do this for you. Now he was like intentionally shooting little 9-year-old girls, little 6-year-old boys. This is happening in Oakland and everywhere else, especially the places who have defunded their police force, right? And again, this is not a talking point from me or from MC. This is according to read that article that I was just referencing. The post BLM Oakland is crying out, nobody cares. It references the people in Oakland, the NAACP chapter in Oakland, community leaders in Oakland saying that this initiative has been destructive for our community. We are seeing it in front of our faces. So the fact that Oakland City Council had time, they just had time to come together to discuss something that has nothing to do with them. And you know what? I wouldn't even say nothing. What's going on in Israel does affect us in the world. But what I'm saying is, if you don't have time or energy or the willingness to sit down with your own people to talk about problems in the city in which you govern, the city wherein you govern, you have no time to discuss that, but you have time to discuss what's happening in the country all the way over there. There's something wrong at best. At worst, there's some sort of agenda happening here. Why are we letting all these people literally come into our building and say that Hamas didn't do what Hamas recorded themselves doing? That the IDF killed their own people, babies weren't beheaded, it didn't happen, and Hamas is a legitimate resistance force. Wow. And if you notice, and this is just what, one thing for those who are maybe are kind of new in the advocacy space, if you notice, there were two different conflicting arguments going on the other side. They were saying that what Israel said happened didn't actually happen. And then some people said, well, it happened, but Israel deserved it. They were justified. Okay, which one is it? Did it happen or did it not happen? Is Israel lying or is Hamas justified in what they did? Because you can't have both of those arguments. You can't say, no, Hamas didn't do all that stuff, and then say, yes, Hamas is justified in doing all that stuff. Pastor Matrilla said, I will say it again, destructive distraction to hide the true agendas. Ma'am, absolutely. And ain't that just the theme of, we could of anything really. We were talking about with Olga, it was a few weeks ago, we were talking about poor governance in South Africa, and that same kind of thing where there doesn't seem to be any energy or actual work put into addressing what's happening on the ground in South Africa. But then the ANC will stand up and say, we stand with Palestine, and we condemn Israel, and we call for a ceasefire. It's like, okay, hold on. Even if that position was correct, let's just say that position is a correct position. What in the world does that have to do with you? Why is your country suffering and you're just talking about what's happening in Israel? How about let's fix your own house first, right? Even if what you're saying is correct, why are we having a hearing in the halls of the city council in Oakland talking about not Oakland? It would be just as absurd if there was a hearing in Oakland to talk about Detroit. It would be just as absurd if there was a city council meeting in Oakland talking about San Francisco. That's not your city. That's not where you live. That's not where you govern. So we're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk about the ceasefire. So really, that you might as well just pull up a middle finger to all the people who have been crying out about what's been happening in Oakland and how people have been dying. You might as well just tell them, screw you guys, we don't care about you, because that's what happened. So not only are we going to ignore you, we're going to bring in these people to talk about Israel and to spit on Israel. So that's what's happening in Oakland right now. It's a shame. And again, and this, and I want to push this further now. I said this has to do with us as Israel advocates too. We've been saying this for a minute, and there still seems to be this notion, this sentiment that at some point in history since 2013, when BLM first came on the ground, whether it was the Women's March, whether it was the environmental movement, whether it was whatever it was, right? These very far left social justice movements, once upon a time, they were real allies of the Jewish people. And once upon a time, they were real allies with Israelis, right? And then they just turned their backs one day. So now we have to try and work and get them to care about us again. Nope, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, not sorry. I don't even care about bursting your bubble at this point. What I'm saying is, they were never your friends in the first place. They were never your friends in the first place. BLM was never friends with Israel from the beginning. From the beginning, they either had nothing to say. The first thing they said about Israel was during the Trayvon Martin protests, from Ferguson to Palestine. That was, I'm sorry, Mike Brown, from Ferguson to Palestine. Like, from the beginning, they weren't your friends. It's not a how do we get our allies back? They're showing you who they are. What's happening in Oakland, what happened within the city council, they're showing you who they've always been. I want to say one more thing. I see Olga here. The masks are coming off, you guys. Amanda Seals, for those she's been getting real popular lately because she's been straight up shilling literally for Hamas. And that's what she did in her most recent video. I know that what the other stuff that she used to talk about before sounded pretty and flowery, but I'm telling you again, like we've been talking about, the whole ideology is crap. The whole ideology. And now she's showing you, without even realizing it, she's showing you how crap it is. Because what she's doing is taking the same logic in that ideology and applying it to Hamas and saying that, no, they're just resistance fighters, and they're not all bad. Everyone keeps saying that they're terrorists. It's just a few. She said they're just a few bad apples. I'm like, wow, you sound like an All Lives Matter police defender. I mean, at this point, you sound like those people that you always come against. You sound like those people that you've been railing against. You just said that Hamas are not bad. It's just a few bad apples. That's what she said. One of her most recent videos. But you guys, she didn't just turn into this person one day. This is who she is. This is what she believes. We need to stop being so shocked when we see this and know that this ideology that some of us seem to support and think is such a great idea, it always leads to this. It always will lead to this. They're not doing anything new. They're just applying what they've already been doing. They've been applying stuff that they've been applying to Black people, that we're always going to suffer. We're always going to be oppressed, and everything that we do is justified. That's why all the riots were justified. That's why blocking the freeways were justified, because we're oppressed and we don't know any better, and we're little babies and we don't know how to conduct ourselves. They're just applying that to the Palestinians. They're applying that to Hamas. And now we're saying, oh, no, that's wrong. Yeah, let's go. No. Let's back up all the way to that then. If that's wrong, let's go all the way back and say that that is also wrong. You can't say that that's justified and then come over here and say that, no, that's wrong. That's selfish on your part, because what you're saying is, yeah, Black people are stupid. They are babies. They are whatever. You can do that. That's fine. That's not us. It's not to do this. Oh, but no, you can't do it with Israel. You can't do it with Palestinians. Oh, wow. So now we can't do it. We got to stop doing that, you guys. Hello, Olga. How are you?
Sorry, I was trying to get my mic to unmute. Good evening to everybody that's online with us.
How are you? How have you been?
Fine. I'm doing well, thank you. Been busy, but good. God is good. Got health. We're all well.
Yes, ma'am. Good. Well, I guess we are. Yeah, we live in the same house, so we are well, and that's good. Olga, in that same vein, I want to go into, because this is all connected. Right now, what's happening is kind of like they're all connected. The United Nations Women Organization, right? They just condemned Hamas 4 days ago, which is over a month after all the rapings and killings that they did. And this is after a lot of prodding and pushing from people, right? Like, this was not just they decided to condemn them. They actually before they even condemned Hamas, they were talking about why they didn't want to condemn Hamas, right? So please, can you kind of unwrap for us what's happening here? Like why it took them so long, and then if you could also mention in the same theme about our response, our reaction to that.
Well, to your question, Joshua, about why did it take them so long, to be totally blunt, the answer is easy. The United Nations is anti-Semitic through and through. And if anybody was, and I say this with as much respect and as much empathy as I can, if anybody was looking to the United Nations to do the right thing, to have any form of moral clarity as it came to Israel, they were fooling themselves. It is the United Nations General Assembly that has as a standing point on its agenda at every single one of its meetings condemning Israel. Let's bring up Israel, but let's forget about the Uyghurs that are being, where there's a genocide against them. Let's forget about the human rights abuses that have happened in Syria and Venezuela. Oh, with Iran, let's make sure that Iran takes upon positions of leadership within its various organs. So for people to have looked at the United Nations to say something, for me, was astounding. But leaving that aside, what happened finally on December the 1st, which was a few days after November 25th. Why is that day important? Because that day is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And that kickstarts 16 days of activism across many countries in the world, including my country, my home country of South Africa. And in that period of time, what is supposed to happen is that there's supposed to be the highlighting of violence against women and how this needs to come to an end, and how people, women, men, all persons that are concerned with human rights need to take a stand against violence against women. Yet there was silence in relation to the atrocities, the wickedness that we are actually only now starting to really, really get to grips with in relation to what happened to young women as well as women. And I saw an article today, not just women, young or old, but men as well, how rape was used as a form of violence. Young girls who, people looking at their bodies in the morgue, their pelvises were broken as a result of what they had endured. There was a young hostage, and I forget her name, who before she went into Gaza, she was walking fine. Now she's come out of Gaza, she's limping. You can only imagine the horrors that have happened to her. I mean, we've read about reports in relation to how there were gang rapes of women, and how they were even raping bodies of women that they had murdered and cutting off their breasts and all sorts of things. And so it took the United Nations only until this last week, Friday, when they finally came out and said that they condemn all sorts of, they condemn the violence that has been reported in relation to October 7, and also are calling for an investigation around that. A couple of weeks back, the United Nations did finally, let me not say finally, they, for the first time really, after October 7, they issued a report condemning Hamas, but very quickly that tweet was deleted. And when it was interrogated to say, okay, but why did you delete that tweet, which included the condemnation of Hamas, right? So they condemned the violence against the women and they condemned Hamas. They were like, oh, actually, you know what? The release of the hostages has just begun. We actually just want to focus on the hostages, not condemn Hamas. That's why we deleted our tweet. So the United Nations, with utmost respect, this has been a total farce. It's a total joke. And some people are saying, finally, they're saying something. And I'm like, okay, really? But let's then, and I'll keep quiet after this. If this is supposed to be 16 days of activism, against gender-based violence, where are the Me Too movement? Where are all of the celebrities that were saying, believe all women? I forget her name. The lady that accused Judge Kavanaugh. Was it Justice Kavanaugh? What was his name?
Yeah, Kavanaugh.
Anyway, so there was
the
no evidence. The evidence was very slim, but remember the slogan was, no, believe all women. If a woman says that this has happened to her, believe her. Oh, but we're not going to do that for the Jews. We're not going to do that for Israelis. We're not going to do that even for other nationals that were part of the group of people that were kidnapped as well as that were raped. And so to your point that you made as I joined, that people need to recognize who and what people are actually saying and accept it for who they are. The United Nations is not the friend of the state of Israel. The United Nations is not the friend of Israelis. The United Nations is not the friend of the Jews. And I promise I'll shut up after this. It is also not the friend of Africans. And I'll speak a little bit about that later. We as IBSI have written about how the anti-Semitic stance taken by the United Nations actually hurts Africans. And in this instance, it also hurts African women.
Absolutely. Olga, yes, and and we talked about that for a little bit, and we will talk about it some more, I think, today, is that it's kind of the theme, actually. We're talking about Oakland. We're talking about social justice warriors like Amanda Seals, which I don't want to play that video because it's just so you can find it if you want to. But this whole notion of it's not just that these are good people or good organizations, except they don't like Israel. And it's not the case. And some people understand that, some people don't. Is that the UN is deeply corrupt. Period. We talked about that. Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General of blessed memory, he spoke to this, and he wasn't even necessarily he wasn't considered a Zionist. He wasn't a strong Israel. He said some things even against Israel, but he even took notice that, wow, you guys, we talk about Israel quite a bit in these hearings. Like, what about Sudan? What about what's going on in the Congo? What about what about the rest of the world? Like, even for him, and his thing wasn't Israel high. His thing was, this just seems very lopsided, and like there's maybe an agenda here. Same thing with, like I said, with what's happening in Oakland. It's not that BLM was a great, angelic organization that came in and saved Black people, but they just have this one little flaw: they hate Israel. No, they have a destructive ideology that's destroying everything, and they're trying to destroy Israel. That's the whole thing. But let's get to what you said. You said that the UN also doesn't care about Africa. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of examples to look at. We can start all the way from, at least in this context, 2001, where we had the BDS conference in South Africa, Durban, South Africa. We've actually spoken about it on this forum as well, where this conference was held to actually discuss how they were going to deal with xenophobia, how they were going to deal with various forms of racism, which are real issues impacting many nations across the world and impacting Africa. Xenophobia, unfortunately, is still an issue. But instead of addressing that, which would help the millions and the billions of people on the African continent, Israel then became a factor. And then the whole lie in relation to Israel being an apartheid state and how that was then later adopted by BDS and how now it has fueled much of the anti-Semitism that we're seeing came about. And because then we find people that are quote unquote protesting and marching in the streets underneath the banner of Israel is all of that, the real issues pertaining to Africans, nobody cares about, right? It is not Africa that has a standing agenda item either at the General Assembly or even at the Human Rights Commission. It's not Africa. It's not African issues that have been taken up and where a real commission of inquiry has been formed to investigate the horrors that are done. We can unfortunately look at many, many examples, whether we're talking about the genocide in Nigeria, we're talking about terrorism that may be taking place across the continent, we're talking about slavery, including the slavery of women. There's no commission of inquiry that's going into that, but there is a commission of inquiry that's looking into the supposed crimes that Israel is doing, including its very founding in 1948. And so when there are real issues and real matters that are impacting the lives of African men and women on the continent, those issues take second, I would even say third or maybe even fourth place to the lie in relation to Israel. And that is why I say to people that if you are really, really, really interested and concerned about human rights and specifically about Black human rights, you will want the United Nations, insofar as it pertains to Israel, to be shut down. You will want social justice warriors who only care about social issues when it comes to Israel to keep quiet. Because if they were consistent, they would be consistent on all issues. With your permission, if I can segue into this particular point.
Go ahead.
I saw an article earlier today, which I appreciated, but it also got me very upset. And why did it get me very upset? Because somebody was calling out Michelle Obama's, amongst other celebrities or women of high profile, calling out their hypocrisy on why they, in this moment, have been silent. We have not seen condemnation come from them. We have not seen statements issuing compassion or issuing even an investigation, or however we want to frame it. And so this particular author was calling out the fact that Michelle Obama, you stood there with a sign, hashtag bring back our girls in 2014, when there was over 200 young girls that were kidnapped in Nigeria in the province of Chibok. There was about 246, if I'm not mistaken, close to 250. And this author was calling out and saying, Michelle Obama, you said, there we go, thank you very much. You said bring back our girls then, but you're saying nothing now. Is it because the girls then were African Christian girls and the women now are Israeli and Jews? And so I looked at that and I was like, you know what? I appreciate the fact that, yes, you're calling out the fact that she was saying something then, but you're not getting the whole story. And at the same time, you're calling out the support for African Christian women, which is non existent. And why do I say that? Although, let me actually give her this shout out. She did note the fact that now, today, there are over 100 of those girls that are still missing and nothing has been said and nothing has been done. And I applaud and I appreciate that, but it didn't go far enough with all due respect. So Michelle Obama, and for those of us that may remember, before the tweet that that shared that particular picture and went viral, Michelle Obama did not have a Twitter account. It was that tweet, it was that situation in relation to the girls that had Michelle Obama then get onto Twitter. So she, together with the rest of the world, now is they've got this campaign. Let's bring back our girls. To this day, Mr. Washington, there are over 100 girls that are missing. Silence. That particular campaign only lasted a couple of months, for some a couple of years, because there were different efforts to get those girls out. In fact, let me say this also, those girls should have never been kidnapped because there was intelligence from Israel about the fact that they were about to be kidnapped. But that particular intelligence, because it came from Israel, was not allowed to be used. Story for another day. So we have then these young ladies, and everybody then gets all compassionate, quote unquote, becomes a social justice warrior, but then forgets about it. If you really are saying that you are about a cause, it's not a switch for you. You don't switch it on and switch it off. In relation to the African Christian part, if people were so concerned about African women in this particular instance, where were their voices when just a year later, in 2015, there were African young people that were killed in Kenya by Al-Shabaab, which is also a terrorist organization, because they were Christian? They literally separated those young people. It was at Garissa University. They separated them based on the fact that they were Christians. Where were their voices? Where are those voices today when there's a genocide of Christians in Nigeria? And we talk about this consistently in IBSI, and we've mentioned this several times on this particular forum. Where are their voices? So it's not a question of they care about Africans and they care about Christian women. They don't. It's like, oh, what's going to make us look effective? What's going to make us, quote unquote, feel good because, quote unquote, it's the right thing to do now? There is no consistency in relation to truth. There's no conviction in relation to truth, and it needs to end.
Olga, it's a very interesting point, especially when you consider the fact that, like what you just said, that no, there wasn't a legitimate concern, right? There was not legitimate concern. There's lip service, which in some ways is, I don't know, I want to say it's worse, but it's just a different kind of evil, right? There's what we're seeing now, which is people defending Hamas, right? Telling Israel it didn't happen, and if it did happen, then it's your fault that it happened. And then you also have, like what you said, this fake, outrage and fake caring for something that's a trend at the moment, for whatever the purposes are, but actually not doing anything about it, but giving the impression that you're doing something about what's going on, but actually not doing anything at all. What do you, as an African, looking at what's happening now, and I don't know how much you heard of my segment before you came in about what's going on in Oakland, right? And how it's not just Oakland. We're using Oakland as an example because we've been following it for a while, but it's happening in Detroit, it's happening in Chicago. People are crying out, they're not being heard. When you see this, as an African, do you see similarities, differences? What do you see in comparison to what's happening in your home country in South Africa when it comes to governance, when it comes to people on the ground? Like I said, the Oakland example, people not being represented. So people are saying one thing, but their leaders are saying another thing. People are asking for this, but like in Oakland's case, city council is talking about something completely different. It's not even on people's minds. How do you see that in relation to what's going on in South Africa?
I think very sadly there are lots of similarities. One main similarity for me is the fact that we have leaders who don't care about their people. We have leaders who have been elected saying that we will look after your interests, leaders who say that they will take care of the needs. In South Africa, we call them bread and butter issues: education, housing, employment issues, security, safety. And these are also topics that I've come to learn are important for Americans. But then when they get to positions of power, for whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure of, they sell out. They sell out for the money, they sell out for the power, they sell out for a narrative that will keep them in power.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a very strong narrative that will keep them in power, they say and they tell us, is about Israel, is the negativity around Israel, is the lies against Israel, even though it harms their people. And so my heart bleeds when I see leaders of my own skin color who know the challenges that we face, who come from our communities, who then get there and then sell us out.
Right.
It hurts me also, and I'm very grateful when I see an increase in Black Jewish voices that are speaking out, and maybe it's because I'm just coming to a place where I'm getting to know them, where they're saying, but hang on, you are disqualifying even our own identity. This whole notion of Israel being a white supremacist and Israel being an apartheid state and Israel being all of that is premised on various things, including mainly race. So we're saying that Israel is just about whiteness, and if you're going to do anything that's going to be favorable towards Black people, and if you want to see the betterment of Black people, then you have to stand against Israel. Well, we've now got Jews that are saying, okay, hang on, but that's us. And now we, as Black people, are saying, okay, but if you've got our interests at heart, why aren't you even focusing on us? So there is a corruption, there is the word comes to mind, I would even say a hatred for their own people,
Yeah.
just to sell out for Israel, and it's painful. Unfortunately, the similarities are striking, and I'm hoping that there can be a lot more collaborative work done on the different continents to say we actually have got more in common with Israel and with our Jewish brothers and sisters than divides us. And until we get that right, and until we recognize with that reality and that truth and that history, they are going to be used as pawns to harm us, and we too are going to be used as pawns to harm them. Because it's our narrative, it's our people that are on the streets that are marching against Israel. They're using us to hurt not only ourselves, but also to hurt them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is commented? Can you speak about the way Kenya and President Ruto have engaged with Israel and Palestine?
That I cannot. I know that, and I'm very happy to say something next week. It's just been very busy on my end. So I haven't been following very closely, but I do know that Kenya has got friendly relationships with Israel and has welcomed various opportunities to engage with Israel. I'm not very familiar with what any recent engagements with. There is no Palestinian state. So let's say with the people, whether it's in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, or in the Gaza Strip. But we can definitely report on that next week. I'm happy to do some homework there.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we will totally do that. Yeah. Kenya's been a very close friend with Israel. I do remember seeing something about the president kind of make some comments that were kind of more on the fence, but that's all I saw of recent news. So I will.
Yeah, Kenya it has been, but with regards to how it's responded over the last couple of weeks, I'm not entirely sure. I do know that the people, though, of Kenya have been praying for Israel, have been standing with Israel.
Absolutely.
There's been videos on social media. We've seen pictures about it. And it just also goes to show, including in my home country of South Africa, that despite governments either taking a position of neutrality, which in my own honest opinion is not a position of neutrality, if you're not going to be for the truth and you're going to be against it, that the people on the ground are praying for Israel. The people on the ground recognize that there was an atrocity that was committed, that it was heinous acts that were committed. They are praying. They are showing up in marches, rallies, and solidarity. The ordinary African is Zionist.
That's kind of the theme of a lot of things. Is the people. The people are very different from the politics. I mean, for those of you who are Persian or are in the States now, or let's say in France or anywhere, who used to live in Iran, who have memories of Iran, that the people of Iran are not reflective of their government. Same thing. It's the same thing with us. People keep commenting and asking about. People on Instagram can see this, but you guys can't. My shirt, I mentioned it earlier, but some people hopped on later. It's from a gallery in Oakland. It's called the sorry, one second. It's called the Joyce Gordon Gallery. look up, if you're ever in the Bay Area, go to Oakland and go to the Joyce Gordon Gallery. One of the, I think he's the owner that's there, or at least one of the managers. Really nice black gentleman. We talked. Our host posted the link to the article I wrote about it, just writing about it, giving him a shout out. He, lots of amazing art, and we're talking about maybe doing some music there at a different time because he has a piano in there. They got lots of different shirts that say Oakland, and then on the bottom it says Oakland in the language, the actual language. This is Hebrew. I think it says like land of oaks because sometimes there's not a word for Oakland in different languages, but I got Olga one. I think it was in a Ghanaian dialect. I can't remember. Or was it South Africa? Was it Rasta? Was it?
No, I think you got dad one. I got something totally different.
I got dad a Amharic one. I got mom a Ghanaian one. No, I got you one too. I got you. I'll find. I'll show you. I got 4 of them. I know I got 4.
Here we are talking about gifts. Carry on.
You said what?
I'm teasing. I was saying, here we are talking about gifts.
Talking about gifts, I do. But yeah, if you ever support this, they have partners all over the world, including in Israel. He told me that he actually partnered with, they have an Israeli partner that helped them make the shirt that I'm wearing. We talked about Black Americans working with Africans. We talked about that whole synergy. I mean, we had a really great conversation, and it's so for those who are asking, you should go get one. So we have a few minutes left, and I want to kind of take it back. I want to dial it back just for a moment because there's just something that I really want to leave us with, you all, and I really want to leave us with this thought: is who are your real friends? Who are really your friends? And this, I think we love to talk about this in a personal sense, right? When people show you who they are, believe them. When you're in the lowest of your lows, and those people that you thought were for you were nowhere to be found, then after you come out of it, you're like, okay, well, those people aren't my friends. I know that now. I guess that's it. That's how you end up losing friends. The same thing is true in any kind of work when it comes to allyship, which is just based on friendship. That's all allyship is. And so in these dark times, the people who are either silent or like even more so, they're blatantly spitting on you and like stomping on you while you're down. They're literally, you're down on the ground, you're grieving, you're in anguish because we know people whose nieces were hostages. We know people who have friends. I met a woman who her son-in-law was at the festival with his friend. His friend was killed at the festival that was shot up. That's how close. This is here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, and then you go online and you see these people saying you guys deserved it, that it didn't happen, and if it did happen, you deserved it. And maybe they raped, but Hamas is legitimate resistance. Oh, so now rape is legitimate resistance. Like, take note of that and stop trying to be friends with them. Because, like, with all due respect, I mean, like in their defense, they never actually said that you two were friends in the first place. To their credit, it's not like they said, "Hey, Israel, hey, Jews, let's come over here," and then they turned on you. They from the beginning were like, "We are not friends. I don't like you." And some of us are still like, well, please like us, please like us. It looks bad. It's pathetic. And for them, they're just continuing to show us who they really are. It's about time that we just believe them and we embrace those who are actually friends of ours, and lean into that more and do the work with those people, because there's so much more that can be done. If we could kind of take off the preconceived notions of whoever, whatever, right? I mean, sometimes there's hesitancy toward people who are for you, and then there's like this embracing of people who are actually completely against you. So who are your real friends?
If I could add to that, there's also the component of hurt, which if somebody just acknowledges that this person is not for me, it enables them to heal quickly and then move on. But if there's this continuous, and we say this as empathetically as possible, if there's this continuous, we want you to be my friend, we want you to be my friend, like it's prolonging a pain that's already there. And we also say this from a place of many people have asked IBSI and asked us in our individual capacities, where are our allies? Like, how do we make this work? How do we convince them? And again, I use the word empathetically. The answer is you don't. To Joshua's point, find those that have been consistent, that continue to be, embrace them harder. I remember there was one moment when I had a very difficult time physically, and my mom-in-law gave me advice, and she was like, go home and hug your children even tighter. Like, hug your friends even closer. Hug those people that have been standing with you and that are even being shunned at this present moment in time. Hug them closer and work with them to move things forward.
Yeah.
It'll help heal the pain quicker. It'll help the bewilderment even, right? As to, but like, why? Instead of sitting there going, but I don't understand. I don't understand why. To your point, many of them have been shouting from the rooftops, we don't want you. So don't make them want you. Go to people who either do or who are oblivious and who are willing to be educated about it. And then let's forge even stronger relations and turn the tide, not just stand there for a particular movement. That's one thing that I am praying comes to an end very soon. I am tired of just marching for the sake of marching. I'm just tired for hashtagging for the sake of hashtagging. When are we going to actually shift the needle, change the atmosphere, and actually move things forward so that we live in a totally different reality?
Amen. Absolutely. Thank you, Olga. Yeah, I want to echo that, especially you said people who may be oblivious and don't really know. And those are people since October 7th, there have been so many people who've reached out to IBSI, who reached out to me in my artist capacity to say what is going on. And I had a friend who went from kind of not really knowing much and maybe even siding against Israel to my friend who lives in Hawaii. She was like, I'm going to go to Chabad this Shabbat and just, I don't know, I want to bring cookies or something and just go there and attend and tell them that I'm sorry for all these people who are telling them they deserve what happened on October 7th. Those people are out there. Focus on those people. Those people can be won over.
Yeah.
The ones that are, shouting from the river to the sea, which our friend Caroline Glick even said in her podcast, it's not just from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. She said from, whatever, pick a country, from that country's river to that country's sea. She's like, no, this is a global mentality. That's why these protests of hundreds of thousands of people against Israel in London, in New York, in Canada, in Germany, right? It's not, they're not just talking about in Israel. They're saying that from the river to the sea, this land will be conquered. Like that's really what's going on. Focus on the people who are really bewildered, looking around and saying, what on earth is happening? Those are the people you want to, okay, let me tell you, let me teach you, let me show you. Those are the potential friends.
Yep.
All right, you guys, it is just about 9 o'clock now. I want to thank you for hopping on here. This is our IBSI's weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I am your host today, Joshua Washington, the executive director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. And with me was Olga Washington, our Speakers Bureau chief, and our board member of Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Thank you all so much. We hope to see you this week. We're going to be in New York in a couple of days. I told you, for a huge event. Go to our website, ibsi.org/dates, and you'll see where we're going to be. We would love to see you, whether it's in New York, whether it's in LA in January, February, or in New York again. March, we'll be in Chicago with Peggy Shapiro, which we haven't put on the calendar yet, but we're planning that right now. April will be in Toronto, Canada. We're going to be all over the place, and most likely Israel again by the end of next year. So please follow us. We want to meet you. We want to see you, and please become a legacy builder. Scan the QR code in the top left corner and support us, help us to continue to do the work that we do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Olga, and you all have a good rest of your evening.
Good evening.